We have made a very strong commitment to stay completely patient-focused. We're a 501c3 charitable organization. We are owned, managed, and run by patients, if you will. There's no industry on our board. There's no industry involved in our governance in any way. And so continuing to listen to the patient over the last 5 years and to look at how science has progressed and how things have changed, NORD has tried to stay on the forefront of those issues. A great example is 5 years ago, if we go back that far, as the science really, as the genome and genetic testing really started to explode, one of the conversations we had with the FDA was, was there anything NORD could do as a major patient organization to help expedite the drug approval process for the FDA? They said yes, there really was. One of the key things they were missing was longitudinal natural history data that would help the review divisions be able to understand what the patients were going through. So rather than sitting in a laboratory at the FDA and taking this moiety or entity or whatever it was that was brought in by the company and just taking a look at that, it was really important to have patient perspective so the patient could understand, could help provide data back to the FDA and interface with the FDA to talk about, were they willing to take more risk on this drug? If there were safety issues there, how did the patient feel about it? Just generally merging the patient much more into the conversation. So NORD has signed an MOU in the last few years with the FDA to bring patients into the FDA to meet with the review divisions to be able to bring that patient perspective on all those issues, okay, is one item. Second item is we heard what the FDA said about longitudinal natural history, and NORD went out and basically invested its own money in building a software system. It brings in the review division and it brings in the patient organization to develop questions around the specific disease state, and then basically provides that data that we capture in the longitudinal natural history system back to the review division. And I can tell you that the review division so far in some of the diseases where we're capturing the data are already seeing opportunities to work in new areas that hadn't been identified before. So NORD's trying to be really responsive to the growth in the marketplace, to the patient needs, and to the regulatory and policy requirements as the environment changes moving forward. So those are just a couple of examples. I think the most exciting thing for me right now is working with the patients. I mean, I have family members that have rare diseases where there's no therapy. I see what they go through on a daily basis. I think it's the excitement of genetics and the fact that right now we believe of all the rare diseases out there, perhaps 80% of them are genetically based. So the more information we have about the DNA and the more work we can do on genetic testing, it would look to me as though that's the key to the future, and that appears to be what's happening over the last 5 years as we are starting to see genetic markers being discovered at a higher rate than we've ever seen before. I saw a presentation that Ann Pariser actually did this morning from NIH, and she took a look at what's happened with genetic testing over the last 5 years and the impact it's having. It looks like a hockey stick. So it's just going like this. So for me, there's a lot of hope that that's going to bring the opportunity to have new therapies developed for every population out there. And so I think we're at the bottom of a very significant upturn in where science is going and in discovery, and I think that's why you're seeing more drugs approved by the FDA right now, more rare diseases approved right now, because the genetics happen to be able to subset and really specifically target diseases, okay, so that instead of providing a therapy that may only work really well on the first 20% and then not quite as well on the next 30%. That's the way drug development has historically been. Now you can go back in and focus on that 20% or 2% or 4%. And if you look at the Kalydeco drug right now for cystic fibrosis, part of cystic fibrosis, you have to have a blood test, and they know that works only on 2 to 3% of the population. You can't get that drug unless you take that blood test, qualify, and it'll show you that you'll be successful. That's the wave of the future, and that's, we're really excited about that and want to play a leading role in being able to not only provide some of the data that's going to help the FDA make those better decisions, but be the patient organization that basically continues to keep the patient intimately involved in the drug development approval process. I mean, if you look at 21st Century Cures, a piece of legislation that we worked really hard on, that was approved a couple of years ago, it's really all about getting the patient in the middle of the conversation and being the focus. Everything else gets built around them, and we're trying to drive that.